Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to the frozen edge of the 20th century, to a time when the coolest job in town was also the coldest. Literally, you're an ice block cutter in 1900s, New York, waking up in a tenement apartment with frost on your eyebrows, splinters in your dreams, and a job that involves hacking frozen rivers before sunrise. It's not glamorous. It's not safe. And if you're lucky, you'll only lose a toe or two before lunch. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun dares show its face, in a bed that's not so much a bed as it is a thin mattress over ancient springs with the personality of a bear trap. Your nose is the first to protest. It's the only part of your body not under the covers, and it's frozen solid. You try to move your limbs, but they crackle like you've slept in a pile of frozen celery. The tenement room smells like coal dust, old cabbage, and that suspicious odor of something fermenting in the walls. You're not sure if it's a potato or your neighbor. Either way, you light the stove, a black iron beast that only works if you bribe it with kindling and curses. Breakfast? If you're lucky, it's a piece of rye bread so stale it could be used as a building material. Maybe coffee. Maybe something that once wanted to be coffee, before it lost all hope. You don't have time for eggs. Eggs are for people with time and chickens. Outside, the wind howls down the alley like it's chasing a debt. You wrap yourself in layers: wool, canvas, and desperation. The wool itches. The canvas smells like wet barn. The desperation doesn't help with wind chill, but it keeps you moving. The city isn't awake yet, just the horses. You hear them clomping on cobblestone streets, puffing clouds of breath like miniature steam engines. Everything is gray: the sky, the buildings, your future. You trudge toward the docks with your gear in a canvas sack, a set of tongs, a handsaw, and a pair of mittens knitted by someone who clearly didn't believe in fingers. Your boots are already wet from slush, and it's not even 5 a.m. This is your life now, part laborer, part human refrigerator, and you're not even the worst off. Some poor guy just started yesterday, and already he's got a bandaged ear and a permanent squint. At the yard, the ice house looms like a cathedral of frost. It's a warehouse packed with 10,000 tons of frozen lake, stacked like glacial Tetris inside wooden walls, lined with sawdust insulation. You can see your breath in thick puffs, each one proof you're still alive. Barely. Someone grunts a greeting. Maybe it's a name, maybe it's just a shared expression of mutual suffering. The floor creaks underfoot. You can already feel the sawdust clinging to your boots, your coat, your soul. Time to start the day. Historians still argue whether ice cutters had the worst job in pre electric America or merely tied for it with coal shovelers and matchstick girls. But one thing's for certain: no one did it for the health insurance. You begin by checking the sled. It's wood, held together with rusted nails and icy prayers. The tongs are sharp enough to maim, but not quite sharp enough to be useful. Your saw has a handle worn smooth by decades of calloused hands. You grip it like it owes you money. The foreman, a man made entirely of sinew and complaints, calls you over with a wave that could double as a threat. He points toward the river. You nod and start walking, your boots squeaking against packed snow. The Hudson isn't a river today. It's a vast frozen plain, gleaming under the pale light of dawn like some cold-blooded miracle. Dozens of men are already out there, dots in the distance, hunched over like frozen scarecrows. You step out onto the ice and test it, thick enough to hold you, but thin enough to keep you humble. You remember last week when a guy fell through? He came out coughing up water, curses, and his lunch. He quit the next day. Smart guy. The wind picks up, slicing across the river like it's mad you're here. It whips through your coat and finds every gap in your clothing like it's got a grudge. Your breath freezes in your mustache. Your eyebrows are now decorative icicles. You plant your boots and begin marking the ice. Straight lines, 22 inches wide, carved with chalk and cold fingers. You'll saw those blocks out by hand, drag them to shore, and stack them in the ice house like some kind of frozen cargo cult. Fun fact, New York's ice came mostly from lakes in the Hudson Valley, cut and stored for months to supply homes, businesses, and bars. Yes, people were chilling their cocktails with slices of your misery. Cheers. Back on the river, someone sneezes so hard it echoes. Someone else slips. You hear the crack of ice and the universal curse word that transcends all languages. Ah, you keep sawing. It's not glamorous. It's not noble, but it's honest work. The ice doesn't care if you're tired or cold or contemplating a career change involving fire and beaches. You keep going because the only thing colder than the river is the idea of going back home with no pay and explaining to your landlord why your rent is late again. And besides, tomorrow's just going to be colder. The ice house is waiting for you. Not with open arms. Nothing in your world welcomes you that warmly, but with the kind of silent menace that lets you know it's going to be a long day. You trudge back across the frozen Hudson with your first haul. The wooden sled behind you groans like it too, has seen things and regrets them all. You arrive at the ice house just as a foreman yells at a guy for blinking wrong. Classic Monday. The building itself is a behemoth of timber and sawdust, 3 stories high and colder inside than out. Think of it as the early 1900s version of a walk-in freezer, minus the modern luxury of door handles, safety standards, or, warmth. You open the door, or rather unhook a warped slab of wood, and step inside. Instantly, the air hits you in the face like a snowball made of regret. Sawdust covers everything, the floor, the walls, your soul. It's there to insulate the ice blocks, to keep them from sticking to each other, which is a good idea, unless you're the guy who has to walk across it all day and now has ankles made of disappointment. It smells like old wood, wet wool, and the faint ammonia tang of men who haven't had time to change socks since Theodore Roosevelt was governor. The light filters in through warped slats in the wall, casting everything in a dusty golden haze. It's beautiful, until you realize that haze is actually airborne ice, and your lungs are participating in a silent protest. Historians still argue whether ice houses were marvels of industrial engineering or just really large meat lockers for human suffering. You grip your tongs, big iron claws shaped like a blacksmith's idea of salad tools, and clamp them around the block. It's about 200 pounds of frozen Hudson, slick and solid and completely uninterested in cooperating. The sled creaks. You bend your knees. You lift. Your back screams. And so begins the next several hours. Dragging, stacking. Each block fits neatly with the next, like you're assembling the worst, heaviest puzzle known to man. You work in a rhythm. Clamp, lift, stack, breathe, repeat. Occasionally you whistle, just to remind yourself you still can. No one really talks much in the ice house. It's too cold for conversation, and everyone's saving their energy for the stair climb from hell, the wooden ramp to the second story. Ah, yes, the ramp, your Everest. It's steep, slick, and worn smooth by decades of boot soles and frozen despair. You drag a fresh block onto the ramp and start pushing. Each step feels like a full body negotiation. Your arms beg for mercy. Your knees threaten resignation. Your breath fogs the air like a steam engine that's starting to question its own career. Halfway up, you slip. Not enough to fall, but enough to remind you that gravity is a petty little tyrant. You swear under your breath, inventing new theological insults that would make a nun faint. The block lurches. You push harder. At the top, you finally unload it onto the second tier. A man nods at you silently and kicks some sawdust over the ice to keep it from freezing to the others. That's your interaction for the hour. It feels like friendship. Lunch comes when it comes. No one announces it. You just notice a few guys sitting on crates, unwrapping sandwiches that look like they were assembled by someone angry at bread. You join them. Your sandwich is ham, possibly. Or maybe it was ham 2 days ago. Now it's more of a mystery. You don't chew so much as negotiate with it using your molars. Someone offers a flask. You decline. Not because you're virtuous, because you've learned the hard way that sawing ice while buzzed ends with you testing rivers' temperatures up close. The conversation drifts to baseball. The Yankees are still figuring out how to be the Yankees. Someone mentions that a kid named Babe Ruth is swinging a bat like he means it. Someone else shrugs and says it'll never be a real sport until they put a team in Brooklyn. You laugh, then you cough. Ice dust again. It clings to the inside of your throat like you've been drinking powdered snow. You take a sip of coffee from your tin mug. It's lukewarm, metallic, and tastes faintly of last week's soup. Still, it's liquid. It's hot-ish, and it doesn't judge you. After lunch, it's back to work. The pace picks up. A delivery wagon is waiting outside, and the foreman starts barking. The driver wants 10 blocks for the butcher's shop on Canal Street, and he wants them now. You and two other guys scramble to get them down the chute. Ah, the chute. A wooden slide lined with melted wax and lies. It drops from the second floor of the ice house down to the wagon below, and you're supposed to guide each block so it doesn't slam into the driver like a frosty cannonball. You grip the first one and send it down. It crashes. The driver swears in Yiddish, a good sign. It means he's still alive. You send down the rest more carefully. By now your gloves are soaked through, your fingers are numb, and your boots are carrying half a pound of sawdust each. You could shake your foot and grow a tree. Still, there's something weirdly satisfying about seeing those blocks disappear into the city, into kitchens, restaurants, saloons. You might be sore, soaked, and borderline hypothermic, but somewhere out there, someone's drink will be cold because of you. Not that they'll thank you. Nobody thanks the ice guy. And yet, as the shadows in the ice house lengthen and the last delivery is hauled away, there's a small flicker of pride in your gut. Or maybe it's just the coffee kicking back. Either way, the day isn't over. You still have to clean up, check your tools, and prepare for tomorrow. Because tomorrow, the river will still be frozen. And so will you. Your hands hate you. That's the first thing you realize the next morning as you fumble with your mittens, already crusted with yesterday's ice and the faint aroma of industrial despair. They don't bend quite right. Your fingers, not the mittens. They're stiff, numb, and creaky, like you slept gripping a wrench, which, to be fair, isn't far off. You make your way back to the yard. The snow crunches underfoot like biting into stale cereal, and your boots are still wet. You briefly consider swapping them for loaves of bread. They'd be drier, probably warmer. At the tool shed, you pick up your gear: a fresh pair of tongs with one loose rivet, a handsaw that looks like it's seen war, and a pair of ice hooks so heavy they could double as gym equipment if gyms existed, which they absolutely don't in your budget or century. This is the Daily Trio, your holy trinity of suffering. First up, the handsaw. Imagine a 6 foot long metal blade with teeth the size of small grudges. It's dull from use, chipped from frustration, and heavier than your hopes. It has no guard, no grip padding, and no ergonomic anything. You wrap it in a strip of cloth to avoid shaving your palm skin off. The cloth is repurposed from an old sock. Everything's repurposed, even the regrets. Then there are the tongs. Ice block tongs look like a pair of evil crab pincers, designed by a blacksmith who failed out of dental school. They open wide to grab blocks and clamp tight with a satisfying crunch, unless you catch your own hand in them, in which case you scream in 5 different languages. And finally, the hooks. These curve like question marks and exist purely to rip into ice and your dignity. They're for hauling, stabbing, prying, and occasionally whacking the sled when it misbehaves. You sling one over each shoulder like cold iron parrots and prepare for another session of winter calisthenics disguised as employment. Historians still argue whether ice cutters developed abnormal upper body strength or just pain tolerance so high it bordered on spiritual detachment. You walk out onto the river, tools jangling, boots squeaking, back already protesting. The sun's barely up. The sky is a pale soup, and you see them again. The horses. Yes, the horses. They're standing there with that look horses get when they know they're doing something profoundly beneath their station. These are draft horses, broad as bathtubs, each named something like Duke, or Molly, or Don't Touch Me. They're hitched to wooden plows with metal teeth designed to score the ice into neat rectangular grids. You lead them onto the surface like you're in charge, which is a funny little lie everyone agrees not to question. The plows groan into the ice, and the horses clomp along the marked paths. Your job is to walk beside them, steering slightly, nudging with the reins, pretending like you have any say in the matter. The truth is, if Molly wants to veer left and poop mid-stride, she will. And she'll stare at you while doing it. Occasionally, the plow snags on a ridge or a hidden crack, and everything jerks to a halt. You get to pull out your ice hooks and chip at the blockage, which is basically cold rock punching with sharp metal. It's as fun as it sounds. You take a moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity of it all. You're standing on a frozen river, cutting neat lines into a surface that could shatter and swallow you at any moment, all while guiding a horse that smells like barn and disappointment. And that's just step one. Once the grooves are etched, the real work begins. You and a partner move in with the handsaw. It's a 2-person job. One guy on each end, pulling in rhythm, pull, breathe, push, curse, pull, wheeze. It's like rowing a boat made of hatred. The teeth bite into the ice with a harsh rasp. At first, the rhythm is soothing, almost hypnotic. Then your shoulders start burning. Then your wrists. Then your soul. The saw binds halfway through, and you both have to rock it free like a rusty canoe. Sometimes it jams and flings a chunk of ice at your face. That's the river saying good morning. You eventually cut a full block loose. It shifts slightly in the water, dark and glassy. One guy shoves a pike under it, the other grabs the tongs. You hook, Lift, grunt, and drag it toward the sled, praying it doesn't slip and pin your foot to history. And there it is, one ice block. Just 99 more to go. You pause for a moment and look around. A dozen teams working in sync across the frozen sheet. Horses plodding, men sawing, steam rising in plumes from hot breath and cold sweat. The whole scene looks like a weird ballet, choreographed by someone with frostbite and a grudge. There's an odd beauty to it. Even as your fingers go numb and your teeth chatter, Morse code, there's something deeply human about wresting clean ice from nature and dragging it home like a trophy. Until you remember, you're getting paid 2 cents a block. Then the beauty fades like your body heat. By mid morning, you've cut a dozen. The sun climbs reluctantly over the city skyline, reflecting off the river like a flashlight in a freezer. You look at your hands. They're red, raw, and weirdly shiny. You lost feeling an hour ago. That's either good or very bad. Your saw partner, a guy named Gus who chews tobacco like it owes him money, spits and shrugs. Cold enough to freeze the devil's whiskers, he mutters. You nod. It's an understatement. But at least the tools haven't broken yet. Unlike your last pair of boots. You go back to work. Pull, push, crack, curse. And somewhere between ice blocks Thurries in 17 and numbers 18, you start humming To Keep Your Sanity. Something folksy. Something your grandfather sang. You can't remember the words, just the rhythm. But it helps. Because if you stop moving, the cold will catch you. And in 1900s New York, you don't get days off for being frozen. The horses are having a better day than you. That becomes immediately clear as you hitch up the sled again and walk beside Duke, a Shire horse with the emotional range of a damp sponge and the waistline of a wagon. He snorts, stomps, and lets out a breath that hits your cheek like a puff of swamp-scented fog. His eyes say, I will tolerate this, but only because I lack thumbs. You tighten the harness and give the lead a little tug. He doesn't move. You tug harder, nothing. Then you whisper the one phrase Duke respects. Lunch comes after this run. He groans like he understands and finally lumbers forward. You're transporting the ice blocks you and Gus sawed free earlier, each one roughly 200 pounds of sharp-edged regret. They're stacked too high on a sled built from wood that creaks ominously with every bounce. The iron runners screech against frozen grooves in the path as Duke plods his way across the ice. Now begins the dance of the horses. You steer Duke and the sled along a narrow track marked by rows of chopped straw and boot-packed snow. On either side, the frozen Hudson stretches in all directions, a vast white void occasionally punctuated by other horses and sleds making similar trips. It's like the worst parade in the world. No confetti, just cold. And you have to steer Duke carefully. The ice is not consistent. Some parts are a foot thick. Others, thanks to rogue currents or a blacksmith with bad luck, are thinner than your patience. There are soft spots, cracks, even occasional holes where some poor fool tested his luck and failed the exam. Your job? Avoid all of them while balancing 1,000 pounds of frozen geometry behind you and keeping a horse motivated with nothing but shouts, taps, and the promise of oats. Historians still argue whether horses were chosen for their strength, their reliability, or simply because they didn't charge overtime. And sure, they were strong, but they were also dramatic. Halfway across the lake, a gull flies overhead and flaps a little too low for comfort. Duke stops dead in his tracks. His eyes widen. He flinches. Oh no, you mutter. And then it begins. The poop and panic shuffle. Duke trots in a weird sideways crab motion, the sled sliding unpredictably behind him like an awkward dance partner on ice skates. You stumble, flailing to keep the sled upright as one block tips, then another. You throw yourself forward, arms spread like a human bungee cord. Somehow, through luck or divine indifference, the sled rights itself. You pat Duke's flank with shaky hands. It was just a bird, you whisper. Not a demon. He exhales loudly, either from relief or contempt. You continue the trek toward the ramp, leading to the shore. It's a long, gradual incline carved out of packed snow and lined with boards. And it's a nightmare, because now Duke must pull the load uphill and you must walk backward, guiding the sled to make sure it doesn't skid off into chaos. Your boots slide, your knees tremble, your hands grip the side rails like life itself depends on it, because it does. The blocks shift with each step. The sled groans like it's writing its last will and testament. At one point, you slip on a patch of frozen horse droppings. Yes, that's a thing, and nearly tumble under the sled. But Duke miraculously stops. You get up, cursing softly, brushing snow and shame off your coat. Once you reach the top, the foreman waves you toward the loading dock. You guide Duke to a stop. He immediately relieves himself as if to say, I'm done here. So are you. You unhook the harness and start unloading the ice, one block at a time. Your hands are raw. Your back is one sharp twist away from retirement. But there's something automatic about it now, like your body's figured out how to move without consent. Clamp the tongs. Lift with your knees. Slide onto the ramp. Repeat. You look over and see a boy, maybe 10, watching from the edge of the dock. He's bundled in rags, wide-eyed, probably fascinated by the machinery of the operation. Or maybe he's just imagining riding the sled like a winter roller coaster. You wink at him. He doesn't wink back. Kids these days. One of the old-timers shouts over, remember when they used mules instead of horses? You nod. Barely. Those things had attitude, he says, spitting into the snow. Would bite your ear off if you walked too close. Better than the foreman, someone else mutters. Laughter. The kind of tired, shared chuckle that says, we're all in this frozen mess together. You glance over the lake as the sun hits noon. The wind has picked up. You can see little flurries dancing across the ice surface. A team downriver has just started cutting fresh blocks, the saws rhythmically scraping. And there's Duke, chewing on something he probably shouldn't, eyes half-lidded in post-shuffle smugness. You swear he winks at you. Sometimes it feels like the horses get the better deal. They work hard, sure, but they're fed well, brushed down, talked to nicely. People coo at them in the street. Meanwhile, you get a chipped mug of cold coffee and a sandwich that tastes like it lost a bet with flavor. Still, there's something about the rhythm of the job that soothes you. It doesn't make sense. It's brutal, repetitive, exhausting, but it's yours. You know every step, every creak, every icy groove. It's not noble, but it's necessary. You finish unloading the sled and whistle to Duke, who pretends not to hear. The day is only half done, and the ice isn't going anywhere. You step back out onto the river, where the sun glints off the ice like it's trying to blind you, just for fun. The light makes everything look cheerful, sparkly even, but you know better. This is where the real test begins. Welcome to sawing the Hudson. You grab your long-handled ice saw, which is, functionally speaking, a 6-foot declaration of war. It's heavy, wet, and sharp, in that way where you don't realize you're bleeding until your glove feels soggy. You and Gus, stoic as ever, chewing on what may or may not be the same wad of tobacco since the Spanish-American War. Head to your grid. You've got about a dozen lines etched into the ice from this morning. Now, you make them permanent. You straddle one marked line and position the saw teeth right at the edge of your first block. The trick here is balance. You lean too far forward, your face first in the Hudson, too far back, and the saw skips like a misbehaving record. You begin. Pull, then push. The teeth bite, then chatter. It's rhythmic, meditative even, for the first 5 minutes. After that, it's just pain with a soundtrack. You and Gus saw in tandem, back and forth, back and forth. After a while, your arms stop asking for rest and start bargaining for a different profession entirely. Ice shavings build around the cut, sparkling like crushed glass. They coat your coat, your boots, your eyelashes. You blink and feel grit. You sniff and inhale the cold right into your frontal lobe. Historians still argue whether the ice blocks were always 22 inches square or whether cutters fudged the measurements to hit quotas. But you measure by feel. If it looks good enough to stack and doesn't tip a wagon, it's good enough. You saw another block. This one's trickier. Air bubbles, a little crack snaking through it, like the ice is warning you. It's in a mood. You slow down, adjust the angle. It creaks under your boots. And just like that, you've got movement. The block jiggles, the water sloshes, and the entire grid shifts half an inch. You and Gus freeze. Because here's the thing. Once you start freeing the blocks, the whole frozen surface becomes less solid ground and more floating jigsaw puzzle of doom. The block pops free. A dark gap opens in the ice, revealing the black water beneath. Glassy, smooth, hungry. You kneel quickly, grab your tongs, and latch on. Don't drop it, Gus mutters. You don't. But you do nearly lose your footing as the ice heaves slightly, and a cold gust rushes out of the crack, like the river itself is breathing. There's always that moment, every single day, where you look down into the water and wonder what it would feel like to fall in. The cold wouldn't hit you like a slap, it'd hit you like a fist wrapped in cement. You'd sink, boots heavy, coat bloated, lungs tight. Someone fell in last winter. You still remember how quiet the crew got as they pulled him out, coughing and blue. He worked again the next day, because there weren't other options. You haul the block onto the sled, your back popping like a cheap accordion. That's number one. Only 100 or so left. Saw, crack, hook, lift, repeat. At one point, Gus says, "Ever think about selling hot soup instead?" You glance at him. What? Give up the luxury lifestyle? He chuckles. That's about as animated as Gus gets. Hours pass. You lose track of time. The sky changes from pale silver to a grayish bruised color, like it's thinking about snow. And just when you think your arms are going to fall off, you feel it, a shift beneath your feet. Not much, just enough to make your stomach drop. A fissure zips across the ice, just a foot away. Stop, someone yells. Everyone freezes. The wind holds its breath. The crack widens a fraction, then stops. You all stare. Wait, listen. A foreman waves it off. Just surface tension. Keep working. Right. Surface tension. That's what they always say until someone vanishes and all you find is a hat. You saw a little slower after that. The afternoon drags into the kind of exhausted silence only manual labor can conjure. Your muscles have gone from aching to numb to a strange buzzing sensation, like you've short-circuited your own arms. You don't remember eating lunch. You don't remember blinking. You do remember the wind. It keeps sliding across your cheeks, slithering into the gap between your collar and your skin, whispering, "Still cold, buddy. Still here." But finally, you cut your last block. You heave it onto the sled. You stretch your back, and hear something crunch. Your boots squish with each step. You don't know if it's water or regret. Gus smacks your shoulder. Done? You nod. He spits into the snow. Tomorrow, we start earlier. You don't ask why. You already know because the ice doesn't cut itself and the river doesn't wait. You've got a sled full of frozen misery and a new enemy ahead, the Ice Ladder Olympics. That's what everyone calls it. Half as a joke, half because if you survive it, you deserve a medal and a hot bath, preferably in that order. Unfortunately, the only prize today is a crooked back and the satisfaction of not falling to your doom while hauling a 200-pound ice cube up a slanted wooden ramp built during the Taft administration. You trudge across the bank, sled dragging behind you like a reluctant mule. The wooden runners squeal against the compacted snow and old sawdust. You reach the ramp, a beast of a thing stretching from ground level to the second story of the ice house. Think ski slope, but made of splinters, and someone forgot to include the fun. The planks are warped, the railings are wobbly, and the whole structure leans at an angle that dares you to even try maintaining dignity. You sigh, grip the tongs, and start the climb. The first block is always the worst. You've just spent hours sawing and hauling, your muscles already whining like unpaid interns, and now you're expected to engage in what is essentially a vertical farm workout. Except instead of pumpkins, it's frozen bricks the size of hotel mini fridges. You plant one boot on the bottom rung of the ramp. Ice crusted along the side makes it extra slippery. You brace your knee, hoist the block with the tongs, and lean backward for balance. That's the trick. Lean too far forward and the block slams into your shin. Lean too far back and the whole thing flips, taking you and your dreams with it. Historians still argue whether the ramps were designed this steep for efficiency or because the foreman was a sadist with an eye for slapstick comedy. Halfway up, your gloves begin to betray you. The leathers soak through, stiffening as the wind hits. Your breath fogs the air like a tired steam engine. Your knuckles ache. Your shoulders burn. And the block wobbles with every step as if it's questioning your core strength and life choices simultaneously. You reach the top. Barely. The floorboards creak under your boots as you step onto the second level of the ice house. Here, another guy, Frank, maybe? Fred? Something with an F, takes the block and slides it into place among its frozen siblings. The sawdust cushions the impact, muffling the hollow thunk. Ramp still trying to kill us? He asks, brushing his hands. Every day, you grunt, wiping your nose on your sleeve, and back down you go. You make that trip, up and down, dozens of times. Each block a new act of defiance. Each trip a fresh gamble with gravity. The ramp becomes your personal stairmaster of sadness, complete with bonus risk of losing teeth. The ladder crew isn't glamorous. You're not out on the river, soaking in sun and slush. You're the middleman, the bridge, the cold conveyor belt between nature and capitalism. And it's exhausting. One guy tried to speed it up once, ran up the ramp with a block, slipped, broke his wrist. The ice block slid into a wagon wheel and shattered like frozen confetti. The foreman docked his pay for wasting inventory because, empathy. To make things slightly more exciting, there's the chute of doom, a second ramp that sends finished blocks back down to wagons waiting below. It's steep, slick, and curved just enough to make steering impossible. Sometimes, for fun, or maybe to cope with existential dread, the guys up top place bets on which block will make it all the way down without flipping or murdering a teamster. You lose 5 cents betting on block NERP 18. It veered left and took out a crate of onions. By mid-afternoon, You're delirious, muscles trembling, vision fuzzy. Every time you blink, you swear you hear a banjo playing somewhere in your brain. Someone hands you a tin cup of water. You drink, even though it tastes faintly of rust and something vaguely foot related. You don't care. It's liquid. You look down at your hands, raw, splintered. One fingernail already turning black, a badge of honor in the ladder crew. They call it the Iceman's Polish. On your next trip up, the ramp groans louder than usual. That's not a good sign. You freeze halfway, listening. Creak, crack, silence. You hold your breath. Nothing happens. You exhale slowly and keep moving because what else are you going to do? Find a job at a hat shop? Please. Still, the fear sticks with you. Every climb from then on has an extra dose of caution. One wrong move and you're going down with the block. A human sled on a trip to the ER, which in 1900s New York is just a broom closet with a guy named Doc who says, walk it off. As the sun begins to dip behind the smokestacks, the temperature drops again. The air sharpens. The sawdust smells sweeter. The shadows inside the ice house grow long and crooked. You make one final trip up the ramp. The last block thunks into place. Your arms drop to your sides like they're done negotiating. And just as you're about to turn toward the ladder, someone calls out, "Load's ready for delivery." You blink. You are the load man today. Because of course you are. You glance at the ramp, then at your sled, and sigh. The Olympics aren't over yet. You thought lunch would be a break. You were wrong. Lunch is not a time, it's a mindset. A fragile, fleeting moment, wedged between hauling ice blocks and mentally calculating whether you'd survive if you just laid down in the snow and let fate take over. But even fate would probably shove a block of ice in your lap and tell you to keep moving. Still, it's technically lunch, which means for the next 11 and a half minutes, you're not on a ladder, not inhaling ice dust, and not being yelled at by a foreman whose mustache is clearly angry at him for being born. You perch yourself on the edge of a loading dock, legs dangling above a growing puddle of meltwater and hoof prints. You reach into your coat pocket and produce the saddest sandwich in New York. It's rye again. Of course it's rye. There was a time you had dreams about warm sourdough or thick wheat bread, but those dreams left town with your arches and your sense of taste. Today's filling is what might have been ham. Once, maybe. Now it's a cold, leathery question. You bite in, it cracks. Not like a pleasant crunch, more like chewing a rolled up telegram. The mustard has frozen into yellow sandstone. Your jaw protests. You chew anyway. Next to you, Gus is sitting cross-legged, peeling an apple with a folding knife that might also double as his toothbrush. He offers you a slice. It's brown and soft in the middle, but the gesture is pure gold. You nod, accept, chew, and wonder if this is what friendship tastes like in winter. The horses are off to the side, snorting clouds into the air and stomping in slow irritation. One of them lets out a sound that suggests existential boredom. You relate deeply. Just as you're about to savor the last bite of your brittle sandwich, a loud thud snaps your head around. An ice block, dropped from the second floor, slammed into the wagon bed with enough force to rattle the whole frame. The driver swears in Italian, swats the air with his hat, and threatens to fight gravity itself. You sigh. That's your cue. Break's over. You brush off your coat, which is now decorated with frozen breadcrumbs and at least one splinter the size of a violin string. Back to the sled, which waits loyally in a pool of meltwater that has crept into your boots again. Your socks squish. If warmth is a memory, Your toes have developed amnesia. You load 3 more blocks onto the sled, 2 on the base, 1 balanced awkwardly across the top, which seems like a good idea until the sled hits a rut and the top block almost takes off your kneecap. You steady it. Mutter something under your breath that rhymes with, "This stinks," and you trudge forward. Through the slush, past the line of workers eating with blank stares, past a foreman giving someone a lecture about urgency while not lifting a finger himself. You steer the sled toward the next delivery wagon where the driver is leaning on the reins, smoking a cigar the size of an icicle. He's got a wool cap, a chapped lip, and the unmistakable look of a man who hates Thursdays. "You got 12 blocks for me?" he says. You nod. "No cracks?" You shrug. He sighs. "Good enough." You load them one by one, lifting with your knees, not your back, because your back already filed for divorce this morning and is currently not taking calls. The driver lights another cigar before the first one is done. You inhale accidentally and nearly pass out from the fumes. He smells like smoke, horsehair, and something vaguely pickled. You finish loading. He tips his cap. You go to grab your next sandwich half and realize it's gone. Vanished, likely stolen. You spin around. There, at the edge of the dock, a small, wide-eyed child with sticky fingers and a victorious grin munching on what's left of your frozen lunch. You stare. He waves. You nod slowly. Fair enough. You've stolen worse. Back to work. Gus joins you again, chewing on a piece of jerky that looks like it came from a prehistoric mammal. "Break go well?" "I made a new friend," you say. He nods. "Sandwich friend?" "Former sandwich friend." Another block thuds behind you. More yelling from the second floor. A driver drops the reins and starts arguing with the foreman about delivery routes. Somewhere, a horse sneezes loud enough to shake icicles loose from the eaves. It's chaos, but the kind that has rhythm. Predictable, grinding, aching rhythm. You grab your hooks. Another round of loading. Another pile of splinters in your gloves. Lunch is over. And so is any hope you had for warm mustard. By now, your arms are jelly, your back is plotting revenge, and your boots have reached maximum saturation. Welcome to the ice dust hour, that magical window in the day when exhaustion makes everything feel like a dream, narrated by a coughing chimney. You're back on the river, because apparently the blocks don't saw themselves, still waiting on that miracle. The wind has picked up just enough to be annoying. It doesn't howl. It whispers, with a voice like cold sandpaper. It creeps under your collar, licks the rim of your ears, and snuggles behind your knees, just enough to remind you, you're a fool for doing this job. The saw is heavier now, not literally, but somehow your arms forgot how to do their job. You grip it wrong, adjust, and grip it again. Gus doesn't comment because Gus gave up expressing emotions in 1899. The ice dust floats around you, light, fine, and deceptive. It looks like powdered sugar on a gingerbread house. It feels like a snow globe exploded in your lungs. You cough. So does Gus. So does everyone eventually. Historians still argue whether ice dust contributed to long-term lung problems in workers, or if it was just part of the delightful medley of pollutants available in pre-EPA New York. Either way, your throat burns, your nose runs, and your scarf is now a sponge for bodily betrayal. You cut another block. The water beneath sloshes quietly, which would be calming if it didn't also represent a gaping hole to hypothermia. You squat, grab the tongs, and clamp them down. Lift, shuffle, stack, repeat. Your ears are the next casualty. The wind curls inside them, pokes at your eardrums like a bored cat. You flap your hat down tighter. but it's already damp and stiff and smells like wet dog. You look up and notice that the skyline has disappeared behind a curtain of fine white mist. Snow is coming. Or maybe it's more ice dust. Or maybe the city has finally given up and decided to vanish. Your face is numb. Your eyebrows are frosted. Your lips feel like they belong to someone else. There's a brief moment when you realize you haven't blinked in a while. You try. Your eyelashes are frozen together. You blink harder. They separate with a crunch. Romantic. A younger guy named Eddie is sawing a few yards away. He's new. He still whistles, still asks questions, still thinks this is just a phase before he becomes a mechanic or a prize fighter. Today he's red faced and sniffling, with icicles in his eyebrows and one glove missing. Ever get used to it? He calls out between saw strokes. Nope, you croak. He laughs, and you hate him a little for it. You stack another block onto the sled. The wood groans beneath the weight. One of the runners is loose again, likely cracked from hauling too many dreams up that wretched ramp. You stomp to pack down the snow path. The motion shakes loose some ice dust from your coat, and it shimmers in the low light like glitter at a funeral. Gus clears his throat behind you. We're short, he says. Of what? Time blocks sanity. You sigh. Of course you're short. There's always one more run, one more sled, one more complaint from a butcher who wants his delivery without slush on it. Thank you very much. You kneel again. The cold soaks into your knees instantly, like your pants are made of sponges and regret. Another cut. Another lift. You hear a sharp crack. Everyone freezes. Then silence. Then a pigeon flaps overhead and you all exhale in unison. False alarm. Just your imagination playing games again. Or the ice reminding you, anytime, pal. You haul the last block onto the sled. You look down and realize you've been drooling slightly. Or maybe your face is just melting. You wipe your mouth with a gloved hand and taste sawdust. Somehow, you're not surprised. By the time you start pulling the sled back toward the shore, your shoulders are locked in a permanent shrug and your gloves have turned into heavy wet oven mitts. You yank the reins gently to steer, but the sled lurches anyway. You swear softly. The wind steals your voice. On shore, a boy chases a chicken near the ice house. You're not sure if the chicken belongs to him or if this is just how kids entertain themselves in 1900s New York. You consider asking, but you're too tired to care about poultry jurisdiction. At the ramp, the same one you've climbed 50 times today, your legs scream mutiny, but you ignore them. You haul. You climb. You curse the boards under your breath. The wind slaps your face like it caught you talking behind its back. At the top, the ice house feels darker, colder, quieter. You slide the block into place. The guy up here, maybe Frank, maybe Fred, definitely not helpful, grunts. You look like you died 2 hours ago, he says. Thanks, you mumble. Back down again. The ramp, the crunch, the drag. Somewhere in the distance, a steam whistle blows. Not quitting time, just a reminder that trains exist, that people are warm somewhere, drinking coffee, laughing, reading newspapers by fires. Meanwhile, you are dragging frozen geometry through an airborne snowstorm of despair. But hey, your calves are looking great. Small blessings. You're halfway through your 20th load of the day when the foreman shouts your favorite sentence. Get ready to ride the chute. Now, to a normal person, that might sound fun, maybe even whimsical. Like there's a sled involved, maybe Coco. Laughter, safety. No, this is the Great Slide. The chute is a long wooden ramp greased with animal fat and frozen spit angled steeply from the second floor of the ice house to the delivery wagons below. It was built, presumably, by someone who thought gravity was a suggestion and splinters were a lifestyle. It's designed for ice blocks, not humans. But sometimes you are the cargo. Today, you're the cargo. You don't know why. Maybe someone dared you. Maybe someone's absent. Maybe the universe just woke up bored and spun the wheel of occupational hazards. Whatever the case, you're assigned to ride the chute. Your job? Sit behind a stack of blocks, guide them with your boots, and use your entire existence as a brake system so they don't obliterate the wagon driver at the bottom. You climb to the top, your coat frozen stiff in the elbows, your mittens soaked and crunchy. The wind is stronger now, curling through the cracks in the boards and whispering terrible ideas. The guy ahead of you went down 10 minutes ago. He hasn't returned. That's either reassuring or deeply alarming. You position the three ice blocks on the chute, one in front, one between your legs, one right behind you. Like a frosty sandwich of regret, you sit. The wood is cold. No, beyond cold. It's a cosmic absence of warmth. Your backside now understands what it feels like to be a pork chop in a meat locker. You kick off. The chute lurches. And then you're flying. The sensation is somewhere between sledding and low-speed time travel. The ice blocks rattle. The chute groans. Your coat flaps like a sad flag in a winter hurricane. Every bump sends a fresh jolt up your spine and possibly rearranges your ancestors. You try to steer with your feet. Mistake. You nearly send the lead block off course. You correct. Overcorrect. Now you're spinning slightly. Just enough to see Gus at the top, watching you with mild interest and a mouthful of jerky. Halfway down, the chute drops in elevation. Not steeply, just enough to make you airborne for a split second. You have enough time to whisper, "This was a mistake," before slamming back down into wood with a crack that might have been the chute or your hip. You hit the bottom like a thunderclap. The front block slams into the wagon bed and skids to a stop. The second follows, knocking into it like a polite nudge. The third block comes in hot, and you, directly behind it, do not stop. You crash into all three, elbows akimbo, boots flailing, landing square, in a pile of half-melted hay and curses. The driver looks down at you. "You okay?" You give a thumbs up. Your spine gives a question mark. Historians still argue whether ice chutes increase delivery efficiency or just the town's chiropractor business. But one thing's for certain, they kept you humble. Fast. You crawl out of the wagon bed. You're soaked, bruised, possibly shorter, but the blocks are in place. Delivery complete. Success? Maybe. You start the walk back up to the ice house, squishing with every step. Your coat is filled with wood chips. Your hat is askew. Your dignity is resting in the wagon bed. Halfway there, you slip on a patch of ice and land directly on the side that most needed a break. A dog barks at you from the dock. You're not even mad. It feels justified. You make it back to the chute just as another guy's preparing to launch. He looks terrified. "You'll be fine," you lie. He nods. "How do you stop?" You think for a moment. "You don't," you say. He rides. You hear the distant thud, 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 thunk, and a yell that ends in a squeak. The cycle continues. By now, your legs are trembling from fatigue. Not dramatically, just that subtle, vibrating exhaustion where the muscles start texting your brain passive-aggressive messages like, "Maybe sit down forever?" But no, there's still more to do. You return to the loading floor and grab your tongs. Another set of blocks is ready. You stack them on the next sled, adjusting your grip to avoid the blister blooming on your palm. It's shaped like Rhode Island. Outside, the sky has turned slate gray. Snow flurries drift lazily down, as if even the weather is tired. You watch one flake land on your glove, admire its shape. Then it melts instantly, because even snowflakes know this job is unforgiving. You sigh, roll your shoulders, and get back to it. Because if you don't, someone else will take your spot on the chute. And let's be honest, you'd miss the ride. If the ice house is your freezer shaped home base, and the chute is your icy roller coaster of doom, then the wagon is your mobile prison with wheels and a horse who definitely makes more sense than half the humans here. Meet the ice wagon. It's a creaky wooden beast with iron rimmed wheels, a driver who looks like he's been smoking since the womb, and a bed stacked with chilled bricks you've just personally heaved up ramps, down chutes, and over every joint in your body. Now, you're riding shotgun, or rather, riding slush gun. You hop onto the wagon's side ledge, gripping a frosted rail that feels like a handshake from a snowman with bad intentions. The driver grunts at you. You grunt back. That's the full extent of workplace camaraderie. The horse pulling the wagon is named Sally. She's old, shaggy, and smarter than everyone involved. She knows every pothole in lower Manhattan, every shortcut through Chinatown, and every doorstep that's going to make your job harder. She starts plotting, hooves echoing against cobblestone, and you begin your frozen parade through the city. Now, riding on an ice wagon might sound relaxing, sitting atop a mountain of chill geometry, waving to the locals, chewing a toothpick like you're in a spaghetti western. But in reality, it's cold, it's loud, and it's bumpy enough to dislodge fillings. Every cobblestone is a new test of balance. Every stop is a jolt. Every turn sends one of the blocks threatening to leap off like it's considering a new life in Brooklyn. You ride with a long iron hook, your ice spear, used for sliding blocks down from the wagon bed and into the customer's hands, or more often, their basements. Yes, you'll be going into basements. One of your first stops is a bakery on Mott Street. The baker's wife opens the side door, steam and cinnamon flooding out like a scented punch in the face. Your nose twitches, your stomach wakes up. 2 blocks, she says, handing over a damp coin wrapped in wax paper. You unload 2 shimmering cubes, wrestle them onto your tongs, and start the descent down the narrowest stairs imaginable into a cellar where everything smells like flour and fermenting dreams. Historians still argue whether these deliveries were essential civic services or just slow motion punishment for having bones. You position the block into their icebox, a literal box lined with tin, barely insulated. As you lift the lid, a roach waves at you. You salute back. It's been a long day. Back up the stairs, back on the wagon. Next stop, a boarding house. The housekeeper is waiting in a housecoat that's seen better centuries. She orders the big one. You slide it off. She says nothing. You say nothing. The block slams into her back hallway with a sound that can only be described as thunk, 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 wince. Onward. Next, a butcher. 3 blocks. You carry them in one at a time, navigating around a floor slick with mysterious red fluids and a pig's head staring at you from a hook. You nod respectfully. It doesn't nod back. Lunch rush hits, and suddenly every store owner wants ice like it's liquid gold. A fishmonger flags you down, shouting over the squawk of dying flounder. An apothecary needs a slab for keeping leeches cool. A restaurant cook demands a fresh delivery because the last block melted too fast. Yes, sir, we'll inform the laws of thermodynamics. All while Sally the horse stops when she wants, trots when she doesn't, and occasionally turns her head to give you a look like, "You chose this." You begin to sweat. Not from warmth. No, you're still chilled to the core, but from effort. The lifting, the stairs, the slipping on half melted stoops, and dodging falling icicles, and avoiding small dogs with big dreams of biting your ankles. One block falls off the wagon during a tight turn. You chase it down the alley, hook it with your tongs, and drag it back like a hunter returning with prey. A group of neighborhood kids follows you for a bit, chanting "Iceman, Iceman," like you're a mythic figure who controls winter. One throws a snowball. You throw one back gently. He ducks. His friend catches it in the ear and yells. Everyone laughs, except you. Your hands are frozen. Later, a housemaid at a fancy brownstone flirts with you as you heave a block over your shoulder and carry it up 3 flights. You manage a smile, but mostly it's a grimace shaped like romance. She offers you a sip of warm tea. You accept. It tastes like heaven with a splash of soap. You thank her anyway. Back to the wagon. The blocks are dwindling. Your bones are tired. Your pants are wet. Again, you slap the side of the wagon. "Let's roll, Sally." She flicks her tail and continues at her usual pace, glacial. The city begins to dim. Gas lamps flicker. Storefronts close. People head home. You're still out here, riding with the cold, delivering one melting miracle at a time, because someone's roast needs chilling, and you, apparently, are the chosen one. It's nearly dark by the time you return to the yard. The sun's given up, slipping behind the skyline like it's clocking out. Lucky sun. You, meanwhile, are unloading the last block from the wagon, muscles twitching, boots squelching, and fingers stuck in that weird zone between numb and surprisingly painful. Sally lets out a long theatrical exhale. You pat her flank. "Yeah, I feel that." The foreman waves you off, with a grunt that might have been approval or just a belch wrapped in consonants. You'll take it. You slide the last ice block into the holding area, now a cavern of glistening cubes stacked to the rafters. It smells like wood, effort, and a hint of dead raccoon no one's been able to locate. Inside the shed, the saws hang on the wall like trophies from an endurance contest nobody wanted to enter. You put yours back on the peg, fingers fumbling with the frozen leather grip. It clanks into place with the sound of closure or fatigue. You sit, not gracefully. You collapse onto an upturned crate and let your spine unroll like an old rug. The air is colder now, the kind of cold that seeps past wool, skin, bone, and straight into your ambitions. You remove your gloves and flex your fingers. They crack. Your knuckles are red and split. One nail is threatening mutiny. The others are just clinging to existence. You blow into your palms. It helps a little. Not much. A boy runs past, some icehouse helper, no more than 11, with too much energy and not enough layers. He grins at you. You blink back, amazed anyone that size can still move voluntarily in this weather. He says, "You're the guy who rode the chute today, right?" You nod. "That was awesome." You nod again. He runs off. You close your eyes. Historians still argue whether ice cutters formed real community bonds or simply survived near each other out of mutual exhaustion. But at moments like this, you feel it. That weird camaraderie forged in frostbite and shared thermodynamic suffering. Gus appears beside you, chewing something that may be a root, jerky, or despair in solid form. "Wagon day's done," he says, as if you hadn't just lived it. You grunt. He sits on the next crate over. For a moment, you both stare at nothing. The wind whistles through the boards. Somewhere a nail creaks. Remember last winter, Gus says, when Pete fell into the sawdust bin and couldn't get out for like 20 minutes? You do? He looked like a breaded pork cutlet when they pulled him out. Gus chuckles. Still had to finish his shift? You both laugh. The sound surprises you. Not just that you still can, but that it feels good. Someone down the ramp starts singing an off-key sea shanty. Another voice joins in, then another. You recognize none of them. You don't need to. In this job, names are optional. Everyone's either hey, you, or careful. You lean back against the wall and stare at the ceiling beams, dark with age and dripping from condensation. A droplet lands on your face. You don't flinch. You've seen worse. Someone opens the door. Cold wind rushes in like a nosy ant. You tuck your coat tighter, adjust your scarf, which by now is more of a mood than a garment, and rub your calves through your trousers. They feel like pudding, if pudding came in throb flavor. You watch as the remaining workers start closing things down. Tongs go into barrels, hooks stacked like gothic candy canes. The ramps are scraped, the tools oiled. Even the horses are led to their stalls, tails swaying like slow metronomes of indifference. You rise. Slowly, every joint in your body holds a small vote against the motion, but you override it with sheer will and the vague promise of soup. The walk home is the final leg of your marathon. You trudge down the alleyway, lantern light flickering against the snowbanks. Your breath fogs. Your hat slides down over one eye. Your boots squelch with each step, echoing in the quiet like sad drum beats. New York is winding down, storefronts dim, street vendors pack up. The newsboys are yelling the final edition, something about a city councilman caught in a scandal involving oysters and opera tickets. You pass a group of workers smoking on a stoop, their faces red from wind and whiskey. One of them nods at you. You nod back. It's all the conversation anyone has energy for. You finally reach your tenement. You climb the narrow stairs, past neighbors, cooking cabbage, boiling socks, or playing cards with curses. Your door sticks. It always sticks. You shoulder it open. Home. Not warm, but not work. You peel off your coat. It lands on the floor with a slap and a small cloud of sawdust. You remove your boots and your socks, which stand upright from sheer willpower, and you wiggle your toes, which respond like groggy snails. You collapse into bed. The springs creak. The mattress sighs. Your limbs spread like melted wax. And just before you drift off, the thought hits you. Tomorrow? Same thing. Same river. Same saw. Same ice blocks stacked like icy little enemies. But tonight, you sleep, because sleep is free, and you've definitely earned it. You wake to tapping, not elegant, rhythmic tapping, like rain on a tin roof or a poet's fingers on a typewriter. No, this is the chaotic, high-pitched, slapdash, thwack, thwack, thunk of children with sticks, probably stealing from your wagon again. You sit up, blearily peel your face off a pillow that smells like wool and steam, and shuffle to the window. Yep, there they are. The children of ice, a dozen of them, bundled in mismatched scarves, hand-me-down coats, and the kind of mittens that have definitely been repaired with string and hope. They hover around the ice wagon like pigeons at a bagel stand, circling and pecking, little eyes scanning for a chip, a flake, a forgotten sliver of that cold, delicious treasure. You open the window. Hey, they scatter. Not far, just enough to pretend innocence. One of them, probably Joey, that red-headed rascal from 3rd Street, shouts back, "We're just admiring it." You're admiring it into your pockets. You growl. Not totally mad, just mildly defeated. He shrugs. You're not using it. He's not wrong. Kids love ice. Not the kind in drinks or inside a box. Those are too fancy. They love the chunks, the offcuts, the odd shaped chips. Something about the sparkle, the texture, the way it melts on the tongue like forbidden magic. You remember being that age, watching the Iceman deliver, wishing you could snag a piece, maybe chew it, maybe hoard it in a tin can until it evaporated, like your understanding of economics. Back in the present, your boots are half on, and your dignity is still catching up. You wander downstairs to rejoin your wagon for another day's haul. Sally. The horse greets you with a tail flick and a sigh. Her breath clouds in the morning air. Your breath smells like stale cabbage. The kids reappear before you've even clipped your harness. This time, they're smarter. One distracts Sally with a crust of bread. Another points in the opposite direction, yelling, "Hey, a nickel!" while two others snatch a block shaving from the bed and run like they just robbed a bank. Historians still argue whether the children saw ice as a novelty, a treat, or simply a toy you couldn't eat fast enough. Some families even chip slivers into tea or lemonade, imagining luxury. Most just sucked on it for the thrill. You don't mind the kids, really. Not deep down. They're part of the ecosystem now. The wagon, the streets, the kids, they orbit each other. You haul it. They chase it. You scold. They grin. Everyone pretends it's a problem, but secretly, you'd miss them if they vanished. You begin your deliveries. First stop, the tenement down by Hester Street. An older woman with a black shawl meets you at the door. She orders one block. You carry it in, chip off a corner for her to use immediately, and place the rest in her basin, covered with burlap. She slips you an extra penny and whispers, "For the trouble." Her grandson waves from behind her skirt, a tiny ice chip tucked into his cheek like a winter mint. Next, a grocer. He's annoyed. The last block melted too fast. "Keep your cellar door shut, maybe," you suggest. He glares. You unload anyway. More kids trail the wagon now. A rotating cast. Some you recognize. Some are new. One has an eye patch, which seems excessive for ice thievery, but it adds flair. At one corner, a fight breaks out over a chip someone found under the wagon bed. The winner holds it aloft like Excalibur. The loser threatens to tell his mother, who will ban ice from this whole street. Everyone gasps. You doubt she has that kind of power, but no one's willing to test it. You toss a few clean shards onto the sidewalk as a peace offering. You don't say anything, but the kids understand. It's an unofficial truce. You can keep your sanity. They can keep their prize. One of them, a quiet girl with freckles and a crooked cap, walks alongside you for half a block. "Is it heavy?" she asks, pointing at the tongs. "Only when it doesn't fall on my foot." She giggles, then runs off. You continue. Later, you pass a wealthy home uptown. The butler takes the block. No kids here. Just silence. Sterile. Boring. You prefer the noise. At the end of the day, you're left with a few broken bits, too small to deliver, too big to ignore. You scoop one up and toss it underhand to Joey, who's sitting on a crate pretending he wasn't just snooping in your toolbox. He catches it, surprised. You wink. "Next time, ask." He nods, solemn. "Next time, don't wake up so late." Touché. You clamber down from the wagon, joints aching, arms limp. Sally twitches her ears. The kids slowly disperse, ice chips in pockets, mouths, or hidden in mittens like tiny trophies. You stretch, groan, swat sawdust from your coat. The street quiets again, but for a moment, surrounded by melting slivers and laughter fading into alleyways. It feels like something more. Like you're not just the ice guy. You're part of the story. It's July. That shouldn't be a problem. Except you're still an Iceman. And it turns out, summer is when things get weird. You thought winter was bad. Frozen fingers, ice dust, splinters in your soul. But in summer, the game changes. You're still delivering 200-pound blocks of frozen river, but now you're racing the sun itself. Every block you haul is melting. Not slowly, not politely, aggressively, like it's trying to escape you. It begins before sunrise. The air is already warm, heavy with that thick New York humidity that wraps around your neck like a damp towel with boundary issues. The streets smell like old fish, roasted horses, and desperation. You load the wagon as fast as you can. The blocks are sweating before you even finish stacking them. Your tongs slip. Your gloves squish. Your forehead drips. The first few deliveries go smoothly enough. But by 10 a.m., the world changes. And suddenly, it's not a workday. It's a war. Welcome to the ice wars of July. Housewives demand their ice first. Butchers shout at you like you're holding their meat hostage. Restaurants send boys running to the corner, offering bribes to cut the line. The whole city is overheating, and everyone wants a piece of the only thing keeping their cabbages and tempers from exploding. You pull up to a tenement building, and two women are already waiting on the stoop, arms crossed, foot tapping. One is waving a damp rag. The other is holding a butter dish like it's a weapon. I called for a block at 6 this morning. She's lying. I called at 5. Mine melted yesterday. You try reasoning. You offer half blocks. You even suggest going upstairs and flipping a coin. They both shout, no. Then, simultaneously, give it to me. You hesitate. They lunge. A small wrestling match breaks out. Butterflies. Someone yells something about family honor. You're just standing there holding 200 pounds of dissolving peace treaty. Eventually, they settle on splitting it. You drop the block right on the stoop. Let them fight it out, like raccoons in a watermelon patch. Gus, watching from the wagon, shakes his head. You think it was gold. You nod. It's colder than gold. Historians still argue whether icemen in the summer earned more because of demand or simply suffered more for the same pennies. One thing's for sure. July brought out the madness. The blocks you delivered at 8 a.m. already puddles by noon. Children chase your wagon now, not just for chips of ice, but for shade. They run alongside, gasping for air, shirts plastered to their backs, begging for the smallest flake. You oblige when you can. You're not heartless, just exhausted. A delivery to an upscale apartment building turns into a fiasco when the elevator jams halfway. You and the building's porter are stuck in a rising coffin of summer heat and slow panic, gripping a melting ice block as if it might save you both. Spoiler, it does not. You finally wedge the doors open with your tongs, slide the ice into the hall like a curling champion, and crawl out dripping like a boiled sock. The apartment owner, an elegant lady in silk robes, peeks around the doorframe. You're late, she says. You blink at her, then at the clock, then at the puddle now forming under her Persian rug. You don't respond. Words are for people with electrolytes. Back on the street, a man tries to buy your entire wagon. All of it, he insists. I've got 6 chickens, a bathtub, and an anniversary to survive. You quote a number so high it might be treason. He pulls out a wad of bills. You blink. Sally the horse blinks. You decline. You've got a route to finish. Around 3 p.m., the wagon looks like a battlefield. Broken chips, melt streaks, a single surviving block, balanced like a forgotten relic. Your clothes are soaked. Your hat gave up somewhere near Bowery and probably joined a barbershop quartet. Sally's walking slower now. She stops at corners, huffing dramatically. You can't blame her. The final delivery is to a tenement bakery where the ovens never stop. Inside, it's the seventh circle of doughy hell. The baker's face is redder than his sourdough starter. You're a saint, he says as you drag the ice into the storage room. You collapse next to the block. It's the only cold thing in 500 feet. You lean your cheek against it. Sweet frosty mercy. You close your eyes for a second. You hear footsteps. You open them. A line of people, residents, workers, one very hopeful cat, have formed outside the door. They're holding pots, buckets, bowls, all looking at the ice. You sigh. Sit up. Let's share it, you say. They nod. You chip it down, piece by piece, passing out handfuls of slush like a priest giving communion. It's not much, but for a moment, it feels like enough. Later, as you ride back to the yard, empty wagon behind you, Sally whinnies. Maybe in approval, maybe in protest. You're too tired to care. You smell like summer sweat and quiet victory. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Because in July, you're not just an Iceman. You're a lifeline. There are wet socks. And then there are ice wagon socks. They are not the same. The former is an inconvenience. A squish here, a wrinkle there. Maybe you gripe, change them, move on with life. But ice wagon socks, those are soaked in melted history, saturated with river ghosts, horse sweat, and the echoes of every stairwell you've climbed since 5 a.m. They don't just get wet, they evolve into something darker, something with texture. You peel them off in the alley behind the ice house. They come away with a sound that suggests betrayal. Inside your boots, your feet are wrinkled, red, and morally offended. You sit on a crate, rub your toes, and consider investing in wooden shoes, or becoming a baker, or maybe just moving to Arizona and never seeing frozen water again. Bad day? Gus asks, plopping down beside you. You look at him. He's barefoot too, his socks hanging on a nearby rail like tiny tragic flags. You both sigh. Historians still argue whether icemen suffered more from cold in the winter or wet in the summer. But those who lived it know. Summer wetness wins. Cold, you can brace for. Wet sneaks up on you. It seeps in through seams and whispers. Gotcha, like a mischievous rain cloud in your boot. Your pants are also soaked. From the knees down, you look like you've just crawled out of a pond wearing a wool museum exhibit. Your shirt stuck to your spine. Your hat damp and wilting. You swear your suspenders are growing mold. Inside the ice house, someone drops a block. It shatters on impact. The foreman yells. No one listens. You and Gus share a moment of quiet in the alley. I think I lost a toe, you say, wiggling one foot. Can't tell which. He nods. Might just be on break. A kid runs past chasing a chicken. Again, you sigh. Again, you change socks. The dry pair isn't exactly dry, just less wet, but it's enough. You shove them into boots that feel like refrigerated anvils and stand with a groan that echoes through your entire skeletal system. Back to the wagon. One more delivery. A rich house uptown. Long walk, steep steps. The stoop is slick. The marble stairs glistening with meltwater and something probably left by a neighborhood dog. You brace yourself, hoist the last block, and begin the climb. Step, slosh, step, squish. You reach the top, ring the bell. The butler opens the door with the face of someone who's had warm hands for too long. You're late, he says. Your stairs are trying to kill me, you reply. He blinks, says nothing, steps aside. You carry the block inside, through an entry hall that smells like lemons and upper taxes, past velvet curtains, into a kitchen with more brass than sense. The cook waves you toward the icebox. You set the block in with a hollow thunk. She hands you a tip, a whole dime. You almost cry. Back outside, it starts to rain. Not a cool, refreshing drizzle. No, it's that summer rain, warm, heavy, and completely unnecessary. Like someone turned the city into a soup and forgot to check the lid. Now, your dryish socks? Wet again. Your coat? Steaming. Your gloves? Dripping. Your mood? Honestly impressive, considering. Sally looks at you as if to say, "Told you we should have stayed home." You finish the route. Drag yourself back to the yard. Unload the wagon. Put away the tongs. Hang up the harness. The rain tapers off as you walk home. The street shines under gaslight. Puddles reflecting storefront signs and tired footsteps. Your boots squish louder now. Each step an announcement. A wet obituary for arch support. You pass a group of boys on a stoop, carving patterns into the sidewalk with pocket knives and boredom. One of them nods. "Heard you fell in the fish market gutter today." You nod back. "Didn't drown." They nod impressed. Respect earned. You reach your building. Climb the stairs one wet sock at a time. Enter your room, collapse into the chair by the stove, and peel everything off again. Boots, coat, shirt, pride. You hang the socks near the fire. They sizzle faintly. You sniff. Definitely mold. Tomorrow you'll do it again. You'll squish. You'll slip. You'll question every decision that led you to a life of refrigerated suffering. But tonight, you sit by the stove, let the steam rise, and dream of socks that actually stay dry. By now, your body has forgotten what comfort feels like. You live in a cycle of cold mornings, wet socks, and ice-related negotiations with strangers in aprons. You wake sore, work sore, and sleep like a sack of potatoes that fell down a flight of stairs. But today is different, because today, you're training the new guy. His name is Marvin. He's 16, fresh-faced, bright-eyed, and wearing suspenders that clearly came from a catalog his mother circled. His gloves are clean. His boots are polished. He smells like soap and optimism. Poor Marvin. You meet him at the ice house just after sunrise. He's standing beside the ramp, jaw slack, staring at the stacked blocks inside like he just saw the tomb of Tutankhamun. "They're so big," he says. "They're also heavy," you reply, handing him a pair of tongs that weigh more than his dreams. Marvin grips them, almost tips over. "This is going to be fun." You start him light, hauling chips, sweeping sawdust, learning how to walk on ice without becoming a one-man slapstick routine. He stumbles often, apologizes more. Gus watches from a crate, chewing something that might be food or just his feelings. By mid-morning, Marvin has progressed to moving a real block. He grunts, strains, shifts, and finally, triumphantly, gets it onto the sled, then drops it. It lands on his foot. He howls. You sigh. Historians still argue whether apprenticeships in trades like ice making were formal or just glorified hazing rituals. Either way, Marvin is now learning the curriculum, titled Pain, Blisters, and Why We Don't Wear Fancy Gloves. He limps a bit after that, but he keeps going. To his credit, the kid doesn't give up. You put him on the chute next. "That's a bit steep," he says. "So's life," you reply deadpan. He slides. He screams. He survives. Just barely. At lunch, he sits on a crate beside you, nursing a bruise with a potato sandwich. "How do you do this every day?" he asks, eyes wide. You shrug. "Same way you eat that sandwich. One bite at a time." and a little dead inside. He laughs, then coughs, possibly from the sandwich. You hand him a flask of water. He sips and makes a face. That's just melted ice, he says. Exactly. You show him how to steer the wagon next. Sally takes one look at him and immediately tests his limits. She refuses to budge, then veers left, then stops in the middle of the street for no reason other than theatrical flair. She's broken, Marvin says. She's a diva, you correct. Eventually he coaxes her forward. Barely. Your first delivery together is a butcher shop. Marvin tries to lift the block by himself. It wobbles. Tips. He fumbles. You step in just before it topples the display of sausages. The butcher doesn't notice, too busy yelling about someone stealing his cleaver. Outside, Marvin looks defeated. I'm not good at this, he says. You hand him the tongs. You're not supposed to be. Yet. You guide him through the next few deliveries. Bakery, fishmonger, boarding house, with a stairwell steep enough to make goats nervous. He struggles, but he learns. He stops apologizing after every mistake. He even makes a joke when a cat pees on his boot. Guess I'm part of the crew now. You nod. Initiated by Feline. At one point, he asks what you did before this. You pause. Doesn't matter, you say. This is what I do now. He nods. Like that makes perfect sense. Maybe it does. By late afternoon, Marvin's moving quicker. Still clumsy, still awkward, but no longer terrified of the tongs or the ice. He even cuts his first block. It's crooked, rough, but usable. He's proud. You don't say much, but you clap him on the shoulder. Good start. He beams. As the sun begins to set, you bring the wagon back to the yard. Marvin's walking straighter now, though he has a splinter the size of a knitting needle and one glove filled with slush. He doesn't complain. He even helps unload. Gus watches, then mutters, he might make it. You nod. Give it a week. You send Marvin home early, telling him to soak his feet and thank his mother for the gloves, because they'll be unrecognizable by tomorrow. He waves as he heads down the alley, limps a little, but he smiles. And as you watch him disappear into the city dusk, you feel something unusual. Hope? No. Probably just a new blister. But maybe, just maybe, you're not the last of your kind. You'd think that, after all these years of hauling ice, sweating into your gloves, and negotiating with both gravity and cranky tenants, you'd have seen it all. But then comes the great icehouse rat debacle. It starts innocently enough. Just after dawn, with you sipping weak coffee from a dented tin mug and pretending your legs haven't staged a silent protest. Gus is already sharpening saws nearby, his blades sliding across the whetstone like a lullaby made of steel. The day promises to be ordinary. Miserable, sure, but ordinary. Then you hear the scream. It's not a normal scream. It's the kind of sound that indicates something with too many legs has entered someone's personal space at speed. You rush to the far side of the ice house just in time to see Charlie, skinny, jittery, and widely considered the nervous one, standing on top of a barrel, waving a shovel like he's conducting a very chaotic symphony. They're back, he shouts. Who, you ask, already regretting it. The rats! And sure enough, from behind a stack of half-melted blocks comes a blur of fur and panic. A rat the size of a respectable loaf of bread. It scampers past your boot like it owns the place. You flinch. Gus does not. He mutters, knew it'd be one of those days, and returns to sharpening. Historians still argue whether rats were truly a widespread problem in ice houses or just an occasional nuisance exaggerated by local gossip. But the evidence here, currently knocking over a pail of sawdust and then vanishing behind the salt barrels, suggests the former. Charlie insists it's a nest. You're not convinced until a second rat appears, dragging a chunk of potato peel like it's preparing for winter. The foreman, when alerted, responds with a noise halfway between a snort and an eye roll. They're just rats, he says. Be glad it ain't raccoons again. You make a mental note to ask about that later. For now, the rat issue escalates. Tools are dropped. Workers are distracted. Gus finally stands up, grabs a shovel, and mutters, time to evict some tenants. And that's how your morning shifts from ice delivery to pest control. You organize an unofficial battalion, 3 men with shovels, 1 with a broom, and 1 guy, Lenny, who insists on using a fishing net, despite no one understanding why or how. Gotta catch him live, he says. Why, you ask? He grins. Side business. You decide not to ask further. The operation begins. You and the team corner the suspected nest behind the old coal chute. The air smells like mildew, salt, and something deeply unsettling, like pickles left in a boot. You poke, prod, wait, nothing. Then a rustle, then a squeak, then chaos. A dozen rats burst out like confetti from a nightmare, darting in every direction. One runs over Charlie's foot. He drops his shovel and climbs a support beam in record time. Lenny lunges with the net, misses, swears creatively. You swing at one with a broom and knock over a stack of empty crates instead. Somewhere, Gus catches one mid-run under a bucket and calmly sits on it, pulling out a pipe like he's earned a break. The foreman appears again. Y'all done making a circus? He asks. You say nothing, just gesture to the overturned buckets, the scattered sawdust, and the one rat currently eating part of someone's sandwich. By midday, the chaos subsides. Most of the rats are gone, either chased out, caught by Lenny, who is now counting coins in a suspicious tin, or possibly still hiding somewhere, plotting. You return to ice cutting like nothing happened, but the mood has shifted. The ice house doesn't feel quite as safe anymore. Every creak in the boards, every rustle near the salt pile, it all carries the potential of tiny feet and whiskers. Charlie starts wearing shin guards. Lenny sets up rat traps that look suspiciously like lunchboxes baited with ham. Even Gus, ever unflappable, adds an extra stomp to his walk, just in case. And you? You keep a broom nearby. Not for the rats, really. For your sanity. That night, as you finally peel off your boots and stare at your blistered feet, you think back on the morning. You laugh. Not loud. Just enough to shake your shoulders. Because of course rats would invade the ice house. Why wouldn't they? After all, you're storing mountains of what is essentially the world's most inconvenient pantry. You lie back in bed, sigh, and pull the blanket tight. You dream of a rat in a vest collecting rent from you. You wake up and realize you'd probably pay it. You didn't think it would ever happen, but it's finally here. Inspection day, that magical occasion when someone from the city, wearing clean boots and a shiny clipboard, descends upon your grubby kingdom to declare whether it's fit for public health. Which is hilarious, because you've been delivering 200-pound slabs of raw ice scraped from a river, shared by fish, ferry boats, and 3 different industrial waste pipes. You arrive early, not because you're excited. Oh no, you're terrified. The last time the inspector came, he slipped on a patch of melted slush and threatened to shut the place down and sue the horse. This time, the foreman is pacing. He's combed his mustache. Someone found a mop. Even Gus is pretending not to chew anything weird. The inspector arrives on schedule, stepping down from a city carriage with the kind of energy usually reserved for funeral directors and tax collectors. He wears a bowler hat, wire-rimmed glasses, and a face that looks like it hasn't smiled since buttons were invented. Morning, he says, eyeing the yard like it might explode. You nod. Welcome to paradise. He does not laugh. He begins with the tools. You stand beside him as he runs a gloved finger across a row of saw handles, checking for grime. One of the handles squeaks. Another has a suspicious nibble mark, probably from the rat you didn't fully get rid of last week. Historians still argue whether health inspectors of the era improved conditions or simply irritated every working man into hiding his worst habits under tarps. Judging by this guy's expression, the answer is both. Next stop, the ice chute. He squints up at it, grimaces, and says, "Is that safe?" You say nothing, because the real answer is only if you have no sense of self preservation. He asks to see it in action. You send Marvin. The poor kid loads a block, braces himself, and whooshes down the chute with all the grace of a falling wardrobe. He sticks the landing barely. The block doesn't hit anyone. The inspector scribbles something on his clipboard. Acceptable. Barely. Then the ice house. The inspector wants to see how the blocks are stored. You lead him up the ramp, freshly swept, with sawdust arranged to hide the biggest splinters, and into the frozen belly of the beast. He steps inside, exhales steam, and frowns. It's cold. Thank you, you say. He pokes a block with his pen, taps it, listens. You're not sure what he expects. An echo? A confession? Humidity? You shrug. Depends on the day and the number of horses sweating nearby. He doesn't write anything, just stares into the stacked walls of glistening ice, eyebrows twitching like they're trying to escape his face. At one point, he licks a finger, touches a block, and sniffs it. You try very hard not to laugh. He inspects the drainage trench next. It's a sloped groove running along the side of the floor, where meltwater trickles away into a grate that, according to Gus, leads somewhere mysterious and probably illegal. Today, it smells only faintly of rust and old cabbage. The inspector nods. He checks the salt barrel, the sawdust pile, the sharpening station. Finally, he turns to you. Do you wash the ice? You blink. With what? He blinks back. Soap? You pause. Look at the mountain of stacked river slabs. Consider the logistics. And the absurdity. No, you say, but we brush off the ducks. He glares. You grin. He does not. The last stop is the wagon. He inspects Sally first. She swishes her tail, farts dramatically, and yawns. He steps back. Then he checks the wagon bed, which today is lined with fresh burlap and slightly less rust than usual. You've polished the edges. You even scraped off the chewing gum some child pressed under the bench last month. He makes a final note. Well, he says, closing the clipboard with the gravity of a man concluding an opera, I suppose it'll do. Gold star, you ask? Not quite. He leaves in a huff of paperwork and raincoat rustle, his carriage wheels vanishing into the fog. The foreman breathes again. You, Gus, and Marvin sit on a bench and slowly re-enter reality. Well, Gus says, he didn't cry this time. Marvin adds, he didn't find us either. You nod. Progress. You all sit quietly for a moment. Then Charlie bursts in shouting, the rat's back! You sigh. Of course it is. But for now, you've passed inspection. And that means one thing. You get to keep your job. Whether that's a reward or a punishment remains an open question. Somewhere between your 7th load of the day and your 4th near-death stairwell experience, it dawns on you. People don't think about the Iceman. They think about the ice. Cold, clean, convenient, delivered fresh, keeps the meat from spoiling and the lemonade from turning into warm sadness. But the person who cuts it, hauls it, and slides it into their squeaky little tin box, invisible, you've delivered to every kind of household, from the grand brownstones with polished brass door knockers to tenements where the walls sweat in July and the babies chew on shoelaces. And in almost every case, The reaction is the same. They open the door. They nod sometimes. They point to the box. Then they close the door again. That's it. No, how are you? No, would you like a glass of water? No. What's it like carrying frozen misery up 4 flights of stairs? You don't expect parades, you just notice the silence. One time, a kid offered you half a pear. It was soft, mealy, and probably stolen, but it meant more than any tip you got that week. Another time, an old man tipped you in buttons, literal buttons. Good ones, he said, mother of pearl. You thanked him anyway. Gus still uses one on his coat. Historians still argue whether the Iceman was seen as an essential worker or just part of the city's noisy wallpaper. But to you, it's clear. You're necessary until you're not. Because lately, you've been hearing whispers about refrigerators. Not the wooden boxes you've been stuffing ice into for years. No, actual machines with motors that stay cold on their own. Marvin told you first. Said he saw one in a shop window uptown. Said it hummed. You laughed. Then you stopped laughing. Because humming means electricity. Electricity means no more ice blocks. Which means, what happens to you? You can't help but imagine it. No more tongs. No more splinters. No more early mornings. Also, no more tips. No more routes. No more purpose. You try not to dwell. There's still too much ice to haul. But the thought lingers. That afternoon, you deliver to a woman who's never said a word to you. She opens the door, gestures silently, then turns back inside. The block thuds into her box. You straighten. Wait a beat. Nothing. Then you turn to leave and pause, because on the wall behind her, barely visible through the doorway, is a cord. A new one. Bright and rubber coated, snaking down to a little silver box, humming softly on a counter. You recognize it immediately. It's here, not uptown, not in some display case. In her kitchen. You close the door softly behind you. You walk back to the wagon, slower now. The tongs feel heavier. The air feels stiller. Gus doesn't say anything, but he sees your face. Another one, he asks. You nod. He shrugs. We've got time. Do we? He looks up at the sky like the answer's written in the clouds. Dunno, but I figure they'll need someone to haul those machines when they break. You smirk. Iceman 2.0? He laughs. A short, raspy wheeze. Something like that. Back at the ice house, Marvin is sketching something in charcoal on a spare plank of wood. It's a cart, but with strange, rounded corners and no horse. What's that, you ask? Future wagon, he says. No reins, no wheels. You blink. Then how's it a wagon? He grins. Just wait. Kids these days. You spend the evening unloading the last of the meltbacks. Blocks that sweated too much, cracked on impact, or got rejected by picky grocers. They drip quietly in a corner, returning to water, returning to the Hudson, if you're being poetic. And in the quiet of that work, something occurs to you. Maybe you are invisible, but you're also everywhere. In the cold drinks, the safe milk, the fresh meat, the quiet joy of a hot day, relieved by something just cold enough to make someone sigh and smile. You made that happen, even if no one says thanks, even if they replace you with a humming box. You existed. You mattered. You chilled the world, one block at a time. Some mornings, you wake up before the sun and wonder, is this the last year? Not because you're quitting. Quitting is for people with savings, or plans, or knees that don't sound like gravel being poured down a pipe. No, it's just a feeling, like something's shifting, like the air itself is whispering, tick-tock, Iceman. The world is getting faster. You see it on the streets. Cars, not carriages. Wires overhead humming with invisible power. Stores staying open later, louder. brighter. Kids carrying radios instead of skipping stones. Even Sally, that old horse of yours, gets spooked now when a motorcar honks near the bakery. And then there's the deliveries. You used to visit the same families every other day. The meat man, the fish man, the midwife with the twin cats, and the eternally melting pantry. Now, half of them have gotten electric. The other half are thinking about it. You're not mad, just displaced. Gus says, "You're being dramatic." "We'll still have work," he mutters through his mustache. "Not everyone trusts a machine to keep their milk cold." You want to believe him. But today's delivery list is half what it was last summer. You used to fill the wagon to the brim, blocks stacked like frozen dominoes ready for the city's demands. Today you've got 10, not 10 stacks, 10 blocks. Even Marvin's noticed. "They're quiet lately," he says, brushing snow off the tongs. "Like people don't look you in the eye anymore." "Because they know," you reply. "They know we're melting too." He doesn't respond to that. How could he? He's 16. He thinks the future is something you can jump on like a wagon and steer where you like. You used to think that too. Historians still argue whether the disappearance of the Iceman trade was abrupt or gradual, whether it vanished overnight or melted away in slow silence. From where you stand, it's both. Like a snowbank in spring, still solid until it suddenly isn't. The foreman is less forgiving, says you've got to diversify. That's the new word he likes. Means nothing and everything. He's talking about renting the ice house as a cold storage unit. Meat lockers, milk crates, frozen apples, he says. Same space, same chill, new money. You nod, like you're on board. But deep down, something sinks. Because cold is only part of what you deliver. The other part, the hard labor, the shared grunts, the absurd dignity of balancing a 200-pound block up a fifth floor walk up, that's the part they don't see. That's what's really disappearing. Later that day, you make one of your last stops. A widow who still insists on ice the old way. She meets you at the door with a tin cup of tea and a shawl that smells like cloves. She lets you in, chats, while you drop the block into her chipped icebox. "I don't trust those new things," she says, nodding toward a neighbor's window. "Buzzing all night. Might be spying." You smile politely, sip the tea. It's terrible, but warm. She asks how long you'll be delivering. You look around at her little kitchen, the block sitting there like a relic. Until they stop asking, you say. Outside, Marvin is waiting by the wagon. He's humming, drawing again on the back of a delivery slip. This time it's not a wagon, it's a truck. One with a giant humming box mounted on the back. No horse, just wheels and wires. "New idea," he says. "A way to carry ice across the city even faster. Maybe even without ice?" you ask. He pauses, nods slowly. You both stare at it. Then you load up and roll on. Back at the yard, Gus is arguing with a man in a suit. Something about property, leasing, permits. You hear words like consolidation and automate. You walk past without interrupting. Later, as the sun begins to dip and the street kids chalk the sidewalk with ghosts and hopscotch grids, you think about your first day on the job. You were barely older than Marvin, arms too thin, gloves too big, scared of the saws, confused by the ramps, almost cried when your block cracked in half. But then someone showed you, quietly, patiently, and you stayed longer than most. You hoisted, you hauled, you froze, you thawed, you mattered, and now you wonder who will remember. The last day doesn't announce itself. There's no fanfare, no brass band, not even a memo, just another morning. Same cold air, same aching knees, same Sally, blinking at you like she knows something you don't. You load the wagon. The blocks are lighter now, not physically, but symbolically. You can feel their shrinking importance in your fingers. The route is short, 5 stops. You could do it in your sleep. Maybe you have. Marvin's already at the reins, practicing his posture like a kid pretending to be a man. He's gotten taller this year, less shaky with the tongs, more sarcastic. Gus doesn't show up. You don't ask why. The first stop is the baker, who still makes rye loaves that weigh like bricks. She always gives you the heel of one, no butter, but warm. She takes the block, says, "It's getting quieter, isn't it?" You nod. Next is the seamstress. Her stairs still creak, still try to kill you, but the cat doesn't hiss anymore, so that's progress. She says nothing, just leaves the door open and the box lit up. Then the fishmonger. He doesn't need ice today. Got a new thing. Runs on gas. He shrugs. Faster, I guess. You shrug back. By the fourth stop, the skies turned gray. The kind of gray that feels permanent. The customer, an elderly man, with shaky hands and a perfect mustache, thanks you twice. That's rare, Marvin says after. You nod. Sometimes people surprise you. The last delivery is a familiar building. Brick steps, broken railing. The girl with freckles is older now. She doesn't run up to steal slivers of ice. She just watches you, place the block carefully in the box, and says, "Mom says this might be the last time." You smile. Tell her she's probably right. She nods. You want water? You look at her. Then down at the puddle forming at your feet. No thanks, you say. I'm full. Historians still argue whether the end of the Iceman era was a tragedy, a transition, or just inevitable. You suppose it doesn't matter. You were here. That evening, the yard is quieter than usual. Sally is unhitched and led to her stall. She walks slowly, like she knows this route is ending. You give her an apple. She accepts. Marvin helps you unload the tongs, stacks them gently, doesn't ask questions. You sit together on the dock. Watch the river. The same river you cut from every winter. The same river that gave you a job, a routine, a reason. It flows past unbothered, like always. Marvin asks, "What are you gonna do?" You shrug. Not sure. Well, maybe teach? You chuckle. Not much left to teach? He pauses. I think I'll remember though. You look at him. The streetlight flickers on above. His hair's a mess. His gloves are stained. His boots are worn. But he means it. And maybe that's enough. You stand. The river glints. The blocks inside the house begin to sweat. And the world turns on. So now, let's slow everything down. Let the ice melt. Let the wagons rest. Let the city exhale. You've walked through a life of quiet labor, hauling frozen burdens up crooked staircases and down narrow alleys. You've stood in the cold, in the rain, in the heat that made even the blocks cry. You've watched a city grow around you, faster, louder, brighter. And still, you showed up, one day at a time. Maybe you didn't get thanked. Maybe you weren't seen. But in every chilled glass, every safe meal, every sigh of relief behind a slowly closing door, there was you. A small part of you, left behind like a fingerprint in frost. And even though machines came, even though your name faded from ledgers and routes and call sheets, you mattered. You helped people live a little softer. In a world that's often too hot, too hard, too fast. So now drift. Let the horse settle in the stable. Let the sawdust settle in the cracks. Let the river keep moving, because it will. It always does. Feel the last creak of your boots drying near the fire, the distant chatter of kids chasing something cold and fleeting, and know that somewhere, In the hush between past and progress, someone remembers. You were the Iceman, and the world was just a little cooler because of you. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.